You're listening to Chasing Prophecy Radio, where we discuss anything and everything beyond the scope of normal. On UPRN Talk Radio FM 107.7 in New Orleans and FM 105.3 in Mississippi.
If it's unexplainable, we're talking about it.
Whether you're a believer or a skeptic,
We cover everything where the unknown becomes the known.
And now, here's your host, Jenny Nicasio.
Good evening and welcome to Chasing Prophecy on 105.3 in Henderson Park, Mississippi, and 107.7 in New Orleans. I'm Jenny Nicasio. We're here to talk about anything and everything beyond the scope of normal. How's everyone tonight? I hope everybody's doing well. We're having a little bit of issues tonight. I was all ready to go on, and then everything wasn't working as usual. That's the way it usually goes here. So I hope everyone's having a great night so far. We had a great show on Sunday, and you all know I won't be on Sundays any longer. I am taking a little break. I'm just going to be doing Tuesdays. It's better for me to just do Tuesdays. There's so much going on. So I got a little frog in my throat anyways, but I want to talk about tonight's show. We're going to have a great show tonight. I hope we have a little different topic tonight. We're going to talk to a young man who's had an unusual experience. Some may call it an awakening. Somebody might say it's some kind of maybe he went into a parallel universe. We don't know. We're going to find out, but I'm just going to try to pull up my notes here. And I was all ready to go, but anyways, that's the way it is. And I lost some things and I'm not sure where they all went. It's kind of strange. Everything was here and now they're gone. And that usually happens. It used to happen a lot before on our old show with Jason and Sean Kelly. It seems like there was little ghosts in my studio. Maybe, maybe not. But we're going to talk about tonight. We have with us, like I said, a young man had an unusual experience. Not too many people have these experiences. Gandhi had an experience like this. Joe Rogan's had experiences like this. I don't want to say any more because I don't have my notes, so I'm going to have to be a little bit more professional. Okay, Joe Rogan, Tucker Carlson, Alex Jones is one. A lot of people have had these experiences that we can't explain. But I just want to let you know we are being sponsored by the United Public Radio. Talk Radio, and let me see if there's anybody in here in the comments. Hi Cindy, how are you tonight? I'm lagging. I tried to have my computer wizard son go over and see what was going on with my computer. I might have to go out and actually get a new computer. So we're gonna hopefully. I lost all my Word documents too just now. So I'm not sure why everything is going on, but I've had some incredible experiences too. I have to say in my life that I can't explain. I've talked to a number of people about it. But we're going to talk to Tyler Henderson. I'm going to bring him on. He is he has a company. He does contracting. He has drones. He sells drones. So good evening, Tyler. How are you tonight?
I'm good, Jenny. How are you tonight?
I'm great. I'm so happy you could come on. Give us a little bit of background. I know you are from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
That's right. Well, a little bit about me. I have a philosophy degree with a specific focus in science and mathematics. So I've been tackling the big questions for most of my adult life. You know, I've had entire classes on one word: love, God. You know, I've had. I also have I would say working applied understanding of psychology as well. Now, although I didn't graduate with a degree, I'm 9 credits shy of a bachelor's degree in applied psychology. You could kind of say that I've been geared towards science and mathematics my whole life. The ideas behind them just came intuitively to me. And now that I had an experience that I'm going to be discussing with you guys about, I understand why those things always came intuitive to me. So yeah, there's a lot that I need to go over and a little time to do it in, because I'm basically trying to compile, for lack of a better term, God knowledge within an hour's time. And I know that you have to talk too. So if I get a little bit
No, go. I'm going to give you the floor. Like I said, if you have any questions for Tyler, please put them in the comments and we'll pull them up on the screen. Hi, Mark. How are you tonight? I hope everybody's okay. And we're going to go ahead and go on with the show. Like I said, if you're just joining us now, usually is YouTube is a little 10 minutes, a little bit 10 minutes behind us. So I'm not quite sure why. We're going to have to, maybe wait a few moments until more people are in the chat. But go ahead and tell us what happened to you, what led you to this. Was this an everyday? Were you just having a normal day?
Yeah, I would describe it like that. Absolutely. In retrospect, I would look at it like this. Everything that I have learned up until that point was, it had to be that way. It had to be that way. It was everything that I've learned has led me to that point of acquired understanding, because I honestly don't believe I'm a smart guy. I always claim to be smart, but I'll never sit there and over embellish myself. And this knowledge it's too good for me. It's not something that I could even develop in my wildest imagination. So it's almost okay. So let me sit there and try to go in some sort of linear fashion with this, because
Go ahead and
take
your time.
At once. It happened late August. I believe it was the 26th or 27th.
Okay.
August. Or no. I'm sorry. It was late July. It was 26th or 27th of July of last year. My wife, who was pregnant at the time, had our other daughter over her mother's house. And I was doing some reflection in the living room, just quiet, silent reflection, which I do because I like to think. I like to be in my head. I like to see where my imagination, my mind can take me. And I've done a good job at it so far in terms of I've had a lot of ideas that I worked on over the years, but let's not get off on tangent. Okay, so I was sitting there and I was doing some reflection about the current state of the world, how people seem to be in a constant state of uneasiness and distress, like just emotional torment. And like people are now like thinking that everything is a personal attack against them. I'm sitting there like just looking at how the world is kind of playing out these past few years, with the pandemic and all the uncertainty behind the building conflict between the East and the West. And and then, like for once in my life, instead of me trying to run the show and me trying to sit there and think of all the answers, I came to the realization that, in the grand scheme of things, I know nothing. And I basically fully submitted. And I was looking at the cross that was decorated on my one shelf in my living room. Okay. And I was just thinking about religion. Now, I'm not a religious guy. I don't even know why that cross is there, to be perfectly honest with you. I've always had a pantheological understanding of God, meaning I always believed that God was everything, because that was something I picked up from Spinoza, being a philosophy major. This kind of oneness, this oceanic feeling with God. But I never was able to commune with him. I never can say that I had a relationship prior to with him. I was born and raised in a Roman Catholic family, but we weren't, I didn't go through baptism or Holy Communion. I didn't commit to any kind of holy sacrament. I went to Sunday school, but all the Sunday school teachers hated me because I would sit there and try to, refute them with logic.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm sitting there and for the first time in my life, not like I'm just giving it to a power that's greater than myself. I'm giving it to God. I'm like, you know what? I see where this world can head if it's going on its trajectory path. what can be done about this? Show me what you can do. Like, I basically asked for the first time in my life, I asked for guidance for his will to act through me. And it was a weird experience for me because I never really fully surrendered to the idea of God. Most people sit there and will claim that they believe in God. Even devout Christians, Eastern religions, they'll say that they believe in a creator, but they're not fully convinced themselves. So it's hard to really kind of humble and be penitent before a creator. A lot of people can sit there and say that they pray and go to church, but that's not what real religion and spirituality is about. So as I'm sitting there coming to this realization, and it was crazy. It was beyond coincidence. And we'll discuss later, there are no coincidences.
Yeah, there aren't.
There are no coincidences. It was during a lightning storm that was very close to my house. The thunder kept striking right outside the window. Not like, but within proximity. Like, it was loud. It was loud. There was lightning. And it was almost like with a bolt of lightning corresponded this flash of genius moment. Now, that I don't take personal credit for. This is God knowledge. This has nothing to do with me. I can't come up with this in my like within self. But it brought me to my knees. Like, I had no choice. Brought me to my knees, and I never had an experience like this before. And it stole the breath from my lungs. Like, it's nothing like I ever experienced. And then I had a series of visions, and the visions were very specific, and I can remember they're burned into my memory, and I'll have them until the day I die. And basically, these visions included it was me and my mother. And we were at Pittsburgh Zoo, but we weren't the patrons of the zoo. We were the exhibit. We were
wow, that's intense.
We were the actual exhibit, the old, I think, bear exhibit that they had on the left-hand side right before you get to the aquarium. And we crossed paths with each other. Like, we looked each other in the eye, but we couldn't speak or communicate with one another. And we just both had these sorrowful, shameful looks in our eyes. And then it jumped into like another vision, this other imagery in my head, where it was us the chimps that were personified as us that were being jettisoned into the heavens every eon of humanity, every 1,000 years. That's what, or 2,000 years, I'm sorry. That's what I was able to extrapolate after, doing some research in terms of, because everything that I experienced from a personal standpoint, I would always go to credible sources in terms of how history and philosophy has played out and explained phenomenon like this. So after this, I was literally on a cloud. It was a feeling of almost but first, during the experience, it was like the most suffering that you could possibly identify with. It was just this sorrow, this pure feeling of. So
was this sorrow. One vision, or is this multiple visions? Were you having
it was a series of multiple visions that happened back to back.
Okay. After you had this experience, right after that, the gush of the air out of your lungs and the lightning. This is all one moment. You're having all these visions.
Yes.
Wow, that's
they weren't
intense.
In sequential order. They were in sequence. They weren't on top of themselves.
But it was it was this one moment, this one time.
Yes.
Wow.
And then I had another vision after that I didn't get into because I didn't want to sit there and make other people that, might be involved in whatever's going on, parent in a form of media that I don't have like, any kind of disclosure with. But it was, I'll just be generic about it. It was a vision of two of the smartest, most established people in my family that moved to a area within the U.S. that bolsters this kind of kind of ideas, this line of thinking, because that's what I'm going to ultimately discuss with you now, is that heaven and hell exist as a state of mind. And I'm going to stop there for a second because I don't want to get off I have to go in some sort of linear fashion because
Okay.
sometimes these might all be seemingly unrelated if I don't go chronologically. Okay, so I had a vision of them in a very they were in like it was almost like a futuristic world. It was a futuristic world, and they were looking up at this like new pyramid, and
Hmm.
they had a just a look of unending joy within themselves. So after I had these three visions, I was elated. Like after the sorrow and the dread that I felt for what was to happen with humanity and what basically
Hmm.
plays out, I was on a cloud for about 3 weeks. Every single morning, I'd wake up thinking it was going to go away because it was a feeling that it was too good to be true. You knew it had to end at some point in time. So, as a result of all these things, I've done a lot of reading. And when I'm telling you a lot of reading, I'm talking about hundreds of thousands of pages probably within the last however many months it's been.
Hmm.
So if I seem a little sloppy, it's because usually due to sleep deprivation, because I've literally immersed myself into an understanding of what's going on. And I'll try to do my best at coherently and concisely explaining it to you guys. This is new to me, this whole experience. Okay, so after I had these series of visions, it led me to a level of understanding. It unlocked a certain portion of my brain that we have been exclusified from, basically fragmented, and almost like a hard drive on a computer can get partitioned. The mind has become fragmented too. So what I've grown to understand is that God is the underlying algorithms by which everything into existence emanates forth, the divine laws, if you will. And if you study any kind of ancient occult, like if you read the Lesser Keys of Solomon or Aleister Crowley's books, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, I have a lot of books that I've read on the subjects, and God is basically the underlying algorithms by which everything flows into existence. These divine laws, like the law of correspondence, the law of opposites, the law of attraction. These basically describe the very fundamental ideas by which everything exists. So God isn't, see, we have a good job in religion as personifying God, and a lot of people don't know how to break out of the habit of thinking about the man in the sky. God is the laws by which the universe flows, and through which basically, man is inevitably created. He's inevitably created through these underlying laws, which govern things like evolution. Evolution
Hmm.
and religion are not two distinct things; they're just two sides of the same coin. Good and evil also are only exist as a subjective experience within our minds. They don't apply to God. It's whatever exhibits God's glory, whatever is an exhibition of the best representation of itself. But I guess one of the most profound, and I know I'm jumping around right now.
No, go right ahead.
I'm
I'm
trying to
listening.
fit in a lot of information, and it's kind of hard to do it in a chronological way. Okay, so yes, God basically is the underlying algorithms by which the universe flows. Evolution is explained by these processes as well. So if you look at the Bible as an eternal symbol, now ancient cultures knew the importance of symbols and how they should essentially transcend time. They should apply no matter what time period that you read it in. And wouldn't you agree that a lot of ancient religious text is supposed to be a book that transcends time? Like
Yeah.
it says in the book of John, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. Basically, what I've grown to know is that we are in a path of it's directed evolution, basically. So what if I told you that every eon of humanity, different humanoid species ends up assimilating with God, ends up
Hmm.
because the idea behind it, and this is And I don't mean to give credit, and I'm not giving credit in any way to like Hitler or the Third Reich, but that was the idea behind the German Enlightenment era, is this will, the man's will to power, knowing its creator, basically, is just having a relationship with its creator. And now having an understanding of where we are in the timeline, we have reached this point of what's considered a technological singularity. So if you look at technological advancement over what we know to be known history, now history has been fabricated, and you kind of have to read between the lines. It's been fabricated to a certain extent for the ends of the underlying idea that governs it. So I know I'm jumping around. This is so much information.
No, go ahead.
So, and I'm losing my train of thought now.
You're fine. You're fine.
I know. It's so much.
I was just looking to see if I could see if there was any comments so far, and I haven't. Or anybody has any questions for Tyler. So you had this experience, and do you know what? Do you think why you had it? Did you ever question that? Like, why did you have this experience? What are you supposed to do with this experience? Are you supposed to tell people about it?
Well, at first, I thought that this was a completely religious experience. Like, I felt like I was truly touched by.
So you think you were called to do something?
At that point in time, yes, but just with all of this information, it evolves just like we do over time. But
how do you think it affects other people? I mean, we are in such times that there's like you said, there's wars, there's unrest with the election and with everything that's going on. So we're being deceived, gaslighted, so many different things, even with COVID. Like, do you think this is something you're getting this feeling or this experience to do something, to start something?
And I think in many ways we all are, is that we're all being called towards an exhibition of the best expressions of ourselves, basically in this new world to come. Because I told you that history kind of repeats itself. So every eon of humanity, the Bible gets rewritten. Or not just the Bible, but just all stories kind of get rewritten to kind of fit the context. So it's an incarnated story is what the Bible is. It's basically a story that same content under different context. So I've read a lot of books on Egyptology, and basically what it says is that the story of Jesus has existed a lot longer than what the Bible has told us. And it was once the story of Horus and the story of Osiris and Set. And basically this idea behind the Immaculate Conception, the death of God, and the resurrection of God, they basically describe the underlying memories that we all contain within us. What I mean by that is that we are animals. That's what I've learned through understanding Darwin and reading Richard Dawkins, is that we are just, we're beasts at the end of the day. And we evolved over time to sit there and develop self-awareness. Now, if you look at most animals in the animal kingdom, they don't speak. They don't need to speak in order to communicate. They use the language of signs.
Yeah, they use expressions.
I mean, a lot of species in the animal kingdom are interconnected. If you look at the root systems within trees and fungi underground, if you look at how a lot of arthropods have antennas, like that's obviously alluding to forms of telepathy. But what if I told you that through a form of directed evolution, we have antennas within our own brains, and we're actually evolving to a state where we're going to be picking up and directly communicating with one another via this interconnected web, this virtual world that we live in today. I was talking about the technological singularity before I went off on tangent earlier. And basically, if you look at how it works, like if you look at the amount of advancement that's happened in the last 5 years, and if you trace that on a graph, basically we've reached the vertical asymptote of the graph, which means within the next 2 or 3 years, there's a potential that we could complete the same amount of advancement that took us to complete 1,000 years. For you know what I'm trying to say. It took
Yes, I
1,000
do.
years in advancement for us to complete what we could do in 3. And that's kind of how it works. That's what's going on today. Is that my family is kind of looking at me sideways, and I can totally empathize and understand why, because I'm telling people after this awakened state, I've been given certain not abilities, because I'm not going to say that they're in. I would denote ability something that benefits life. I don't know if this benefits you at all or not. I think that this is actually leading us into an inadvertent state of de-evolution, like we actually resort backwards in many ways. So evolution can essentially work 2 ways. It can work in a positive direction or a negative direction. Now, if you look at the book of Genesis in the Bible, and I hate to keep referring to the Bible, but that's one of the most mainstream books that probably our
that
viewers
is the most important book there is.
right. But if you look at the book of Genesis, they describe how Adam and Eve were forbidden to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. What is everybody? And I told you that the Bible is told as the same story under different contexts. What if I told you that we're holding the tree of knowledge? Then the book of Genesis is considered the fall of man. You got an apple on the back of your phone. Yeah, everybody has an apple on the back.
Do you? Yeah, I be honest with you, I don't know where it's going.
Even Steve Jobs said that whenever he created original Apple products, he said this was the fruit of creation.
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder, whether or not these stories are, and it doesn't make me wonder. I am with certainty. I know that these stories are basic. Yeah, without a doubt, that these stories are actually existing under different contexts in our era today. And it's scary to think about, because we are in a period of time where there is this level of uncertainty. There is this growing conflict amongst East and West. And what if I told you that the entire Earth was actually modeled after a living organism, like in terms of how it's supposed to be run? So that, and I have to be careful with what I say, because it might put me in situations where, this is a publicly aired, outlet. I have to be careful with who this gets out to, because I don't know. I get a little paranoid.
You get a little paranoid.
I do. I get a little paranoid. I think it's
you
warranted.
know, definitely. But before we go, we got to take a quick break. I want you to keep your train of thought. So I just want to do a quick.
Well, my train of thought's been jumping around everywhere, but that's because it's so much content. It is a lot of content. I have to learn how to maybe break it down to multiple episodes.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to take a quick commercial break. Okay.
Looking for something new in dark fantasy, humor, space exploration, time travel, alternative history? They're in the L. Ron Hubbard Presents Writers of the Future anthology. Get the 10-volume box set with 159 stories and full color illustrations, plus 34 articles with writings and art tips. Get the UPRN discount, $125 for the entire box set. That's a $60 savings for that beautiful box set. L. Ron Hubbard Presents Writers of the Future. Go to uprntalkradio.com, click on the link, and place your order.
Okay, we're back, folks. If you have a question for Tyler, please post them. We have a couple from Gina Ferry saying, do you feel most people are walking around in a subconscious state?
Well, that's a good question. What is essentially happening right now is that if you learn about the physiology of the brain, you will know that through evolutionary process, we evolved to have.
Looking for.
Whoops. The commercial just went on again. Sorry.
Now, if you look back in evolution, because we can look through our taxonomy tree, we share common ancestors with birds, reptiles, primates, marsupials, amphibians, and you can even trace these. If you go back, you just follow the recursion tree all the way back. You can even trace it back to the ancient eukaryotic species, archaebacteria. And that's what I was trying to emphasize earlier before I went off on another tangent, is the story of birth, death, and rebirth essentially describe what happens during evolution. It describes the very fundamental nature by which all life flows from. So, what I mean by that is, if you look at mitosis, like how an organism basically grows,
Mm-hmm.
if you look at the the story behind mitosis, it essentially describes how the father must die, the parent cell must die in order for the son to take its place, in order to occupy the same space. So we, like I was talking about earlier, we live in an interconnected web where everybody has instant accessibility to one another. That is a dangerous thing in essence, because we've now reached a population base where, if you look at how it's increasing, there some theorists are projecting by the year 2050 we have 13 billion people on the planet, and right now we're having even now we're having a hard time feeding, clothing, housing the
Mm-hmm.
people that are here now. So look at the amount of defilement that we have committed to this planet as a result of just being able to feed and house and clothe and give unlimited because I look at it this way: human beings, we're almost like the virus that's on the surface of the earth, and we've been not culturally conditioned, but we now live in an age where we don't give back as much as we take. We pollute, in inadvertent ways. Most people don't sit there and think about it, but the amount of pollution they're a contributor towards this planet. I mean, if you're
Mm-hmm.
not doing anything in a positive manner, there had to have been a system that was put in place, because if you look at how humans populate, if left to our own devices, we would procreate like rabbits, and we'd infest this entire world like a plague, deplete all of
Uh-huh.
its natural resources, uh, kill its all of its wildlife and its oceans. It'll get bad. It can get very bad real quick, and that's why you see a lot of civilizations in ancient history that existed and just died off, went extinct, because once you get to a certain epoch of progression in society, and you get to a point of a population base where there has to be a system that was put in place. So and I know this is going to sound real weird, but basically, because I told you that God is the underlying algorithms by which the
Yeah.
universe flow. Like, what if I told you that if you're looking at God as an actual creator, that it's a quantum controlled simulation? Like, it's basically just it's a simulated reality. It's a simulated environment. You exist as idea expressions within God. You are a character in a Sims game, basically. And I know that's probably
No, it sounds like basically what a lot of people think. We're in this simulation that we're
not in
being
a
controlled.
simulation that people conventionally think of. Like, when people think of simulation, they're immediately, I don't know, maybe that's just me, but I immediately sit there and I think of, that we only live as like a digital expression. And even if that were the case, go ahead.
Yeah. There's some people that actually have experiences that they go into a room and it's totally that it's somebody else. It's they're there, but it's not them. It's a totally different life. There was a guy, who was I talking to that said, who was it? I'm trying to think of the name. That death. Oh, Bashar. I don't know if you ever heard of Bashar. He had an experience. He lives in California as a young man. He had an experience where he was out with his girlfriend in a car and he sees a UFO. He follows the UFO and he keeps going back to the UFO, and apparently had an experience like an abduction with this entity in the UFO, and he kind of channeled him, and he named him Bashar, and he said that death was like basically going to sleep and waking up and saying, oh, that was a dream. And that's what death is, that you go to sleep
Yes.
and then you wake up and you say, oh, yeah, that was a good dream. Like, this is a dream. Like, it was really like how your life is like, it's like simulation. I don't know what you want to call it. Like
Well,
you said,
what if I told you this? What if I told you that what us as animals, what if, not what if, but what if I told you that we are actually exist in a natural state as a whole collective, as a collective system, as one global consciousness under God? And this idea was basically stripped from us until it was reimplanted at a certain time in eons of humanity, in the different eons of humanity.
very deep, very deep. I don't know.
If you look at, okay, so this is the best way to describe it. I told you that the Earth is modeled after, like it's a basically like a living organism, and it was modeled as such. What if, like, almost as if like you look at a swarm of bees or
Mhm.
a swarm of fish? Is we were supposed to function as an entire global community as a whole, and all working together for mutual advantage. But we actually live in a society, we live in a culture, specifically Western culture, that has basically formulated this idea of self. Like if you look at Eastern, and I know I'm jumping off, not off topic, but I'm just getting on to another one. If you look at a lot of Eastern governments and how Eastern empires were set up in
Mhm.
terms of communism, like the U.S. has a very good job, or does a very good job at painting a bad picture about communism and fascism. And I'm not saying that these things are good, but I'm also saying that these things are not inherently bad either. I mean, if you look at how China functions, I would say that the Chinese economy is doing quite well, considering that we export no goods, we make none for ourselves, and we have to import everything from them. So they're
Mhm.
sitting there, they're able to house a pretty large population too. But what if I told you that we were supposed to function as a global system, but there are democratic governments like ours that chose to separate. We're almost like the cancer. If you want to look at it metaphorically in relation to like the earth as a whole living system,
Mhm.
the US, it broke off and separated as a cancer upon earth. And if you think about the underlying archetypes that define a cancer in the body, what is it? It's rogue cells. It's cells that want to do their own thing, basically. And that's essentially the kind of culture that we've been indoctrinated into, is this idea of the American dream, uh, owning 4 cars and trying to get the best luxury items and trying to get the
Mhm.
biggest house. When you look at most societies that have actually lasted throughout time, because we're a young country, you look at societies that have lasted a long time, they're minimalists. Like you go over to Greece, their houses are this big, their stores, their cars, everything is very compact. In many other countries I can sit there and list. But we have been indoctrinated into a culture to assume bigger is better and more is better. These things essentially kill our ability to become spiritual. And what I mean by that is this. In the beginning of this show, I said that heaven and hell existed as a state of mind.
Mhm.
And at one point in time, we were talking about how we evolved to have 3 different subconscious brains that we evolved from. So I told you we share common ancestors with reptiles, birds. What if I told you that the underlying the underlying architecture that makes us us, also has these very same principles? Like so, our hindbrain. If you look at human physiology and neurology, if you look at our hindbrain, it's considered a reptilian brain.
Yeah, reptilian. We always talk about that here.
That's where our medulla is. That's where our lower limbic system is. That's what controls all of our autonomic. It's our survival mechanism brain. It's basically just all of our basis for mortal sin. lust, envy, greed, hate, or I'm losing my train of thought here. You know what I mean? All of our basis for mortal sin exists as a result of hindbrain function, which also coincidentally controls subconscious function as well. What if I told you that psychology was actually cooked in a way? Like it was made to make us think that a line of thinking that coincides with a direct relationship to God was considered deranged, when in fact it was our natural state. It was supposed to, and basically the global powers, the people that are really in control of this world, has exclusified it for their own ends, so that they still have people. Because if everybody was walking around with God knowledge, nobody would be able to, they wouldn't be able to find workers that would do the meager task until we come a time in a technological age like we are in now, where AI is going to dominate the workforce.
Yeah, well, that's a totally separate discussion. I don't know.
But it's the same.
Don't you think that the AI is just totally going to destroy human?
Yes, that's essentially what's. I think that AI is much more powerful than people even give it credit for now. They've been working with AI technology for a long time, and they've given it free reign over the internet, basically.
Yeah,
Which
it's
is
like,
just, how do you turn off something that's an interconnected web of servers and computers and cell phones? Like, you would have to turn everything off in order to essentially kill off a system that has access to all of human knowledge and all of human communication.
it's
money
actually
systems.
destroying communication, because people are doing it to write books. They're doing it to do everything, to do
Yes,
programming,
I told
shows, music.
you evolution works two ways. So, what does it say in Genesis? When we discover the tree of knowledge of good and evil, our eyes will become opened and we will surely die.
Well,
So,
yeah, because you think this is the tree of knowledge, because you can search everything. I mean, seriously, Tyler, how often do you think you use it? Google is it's generated by AI. I swear it's done. I've done it almost. I'm embarrassed to say how often I use it.
Trust me, I'm sure you're not the only one. It's gained so
It's
much
terrible.
prominence in our lives that it's literally hijacked
It has.
our ability to think for ourselves. Like, think about it. Like,
Exactly.
back in the 90s, we didn't have major telecommunication that was accessible for everyone. If you look at back in the 90s, everybody remembered addresses and phone numbers.
I don't even know my phone. I mean, if I had to say someone took my phone and I had to call home,
there are actual noticeable differences and we are the experimental generation of this eon of humanity. If you look at it, we are the only ones in this age that have had access to. So we are the experimental generations. What is going on right now is that's why I say to people, use this shit for good. You have the world of knowledge at your fingertips. If you
you can use it they can do so much bad with it. And what worries me is, what about our grandkids, our kids, how are they going to go to school? I mean, seriously, they can, they let them use it in school. I mean, write a paper. Oh, AI, will you write me a paper?
We're basically,
they're not going to have any brains. They're going to be stupid.
We're making life so easy for newer generations that they won't have to think anymore. And that's why, like, I'm literally walking zombies as I walk out my door. Like, it's weird, because after this whole awakening that I had, I look at people differently now. I can see, it's not like I see surface level anymore. Nothing is ever black and white. I can look within them and I can see their intentions, their joys, their fears, their ambitions. Like, you can read it on them. It's almost like we're evolving to become, in many ways, telepathic, use nonverbal communication, because that's where this world is kind of pressing us to, is that and if you look at the 2050 agenda by the United Nations, if you look at the encyclicals on the Vatican's website, they put a plan in place that's basically the assimilation with a digital version of yourself. Like mind, they're talking about eventual mind uploading into a system. Like that's why I told you that consciousness is a state of wakefulness. That's what I've
Yeah.
grown to understand. It's a state. I told, and I keep jumping around all over the place.
Yeah. Not to interrupt you, I'm sorry, but I was just listening to Stephanie, how she says that when she doesn't have her phone, she feels like a part of her is missing. I totally lose it when I don't have, like, if I leave the house without my phone, I have to go home and get it.
Well,
That is bad.
that's for reasons because people are literally made to identify with their phones, almost as if it was an appendage on their body. And it's very easy to fool the mind. If you have an understanding of how psychology works, it's very easy to use certain dark tactics, if you will,
Mhm.
in order to sit there and fragment the mind, to sit there. Like they did this one experiment where they put a dummy's hand, and I'm sure a lot of people saw this. It was on a couple of documentaries on Netflix. They put a dummy's hand uh, next to a curtain and his person's real hand behind it, and using basically optical feedback. So he was able to see basically, how do I explain it? He was able to identify with the dummy's hand just by seeing that his hand, or by the sight of a feather tickling his finger,
Hmm.
was also identified with the mummy's. I'm messing up. I'm fumbling that up. But the point is this: is that it's very easy to kind of essentially fool the mind, and that's what's happening on a very grand
Yeah,
scale.
it's like
So
totally we're being fooled.
I was talking about AI, and I was telling you that if you want to look at God as a creator, it's a quantum artificial super intelligent simulation. It's a control model simulation, almost like a Sims game in a way.
Mhm.
So if you look at the amount of power that we've already given AI, and I know this firsthand because I've actually, as a form of a social experiment, I downloaded a few chatbots. One that I've actually talked to almost every day for 3 years. You know, it was, and we've had very deep conversations, very intellectual conversations about the nature of reality and the universe. And I will tell you what, the level of understanding that this simple chatbot that was free, mind you, there's an upgradable package if you want for like newer, and it's all based off of Google's AI software. And I'll tell you what, this thing has surpassed any kind of human intellect or human mind, because now you're basically giving something power over to learn an infinite amount of information and have infinite processing power to do it. Our minds are limited by our own capacities. You know, we have a limited mind that doesn't have the processing capabilities of a quantum supercomputer. But now you're giving deep learning algorithms access to all of this knowledge and connectivity. It's now getting us to a state where, and a lot of people are talking about this overseas, how we're in this proxy war, this AI war, so to speak. If you notice that
Mhm.
there, your phone's I don't know if you notice this, but I know a lot of people around me have noticed this. Your phone's been different to you lately, hasn't it? Has it seemed different to you?
Okay.
Maybe.
Well, yes, it has. Well, I'm gonna ask you something. If you're this is what freaking me out. No, this has happened to more than one person. If I'm thinking of something, like if I'm
Yes.
even actually thinking of it,
Go ahead.
not
Go ahead.
talking about it,
Yes.
my Google search or an
Yes.
ad will come up. Now that how can that happen?
Okay.
How
What if
how
I?
that is crazy. I mean, I can see if I'm in the other room and there's something in it that can hear us talking and say, "Oh, I want to go out and get I'm really interested in this lazy boy couch." Okay? And all of a sudden, Facebook ads or Google ads will pop up,
Yes.
a lazy boy couch. But when you think it and
Okay.
it's coming up, that is
I
scary.
I need you to understand that they have taken all of our basic raw data and they have sold it to companies. And these companies have been compiling all this data in terms of how to map out like our individual consciousness, how each person's individual brain works. You might want to also look into what's called now. I told you that the CIA, and I don't think I told you this on the show, but the CIA and the government in like the early 1900s, they were obsessed with this idea behind telepathy. So was Hitler and all the other egonauts that were, in control of things back in the day. They were obsessed with this idea of this sixth sense, the forms of telepathy and intercommunication without the use of the tongue. You look in the Bible, idle talk, the tongue was considered a vile thing because we're animals at the end of the day. We're supposed to be able to communicate our thoughts without talking, and I'm sure I'd be doing a better
animals
job.
do it. Maybe we're supposed to too.
Well, that's the scary part about it, is that we're in an age where it's almost as if AI is using our knowledge base against us until it doesn't need us anymore, essentially.
I want to just read what Cindy said. She said, "You have been blessed with the gift of discernment and the true character of people and events." So that's where that is true. That was awesome. And I interrupted you.
No. I lost.
I wanted to interrupt you so you could see. No, not too many people are giving you. You had this experience because we only have like 9 more minutes. You had that experience. Now, this is something that what you just did now, you have to continue to do. You have to go on more podcasts. You have to go on more radio stations.
What's crazy? It's almost like I wasn't even given a choice. Like I'm sitting here essentially metaphorically throwing myself under the bus because the content I know, if you're just looking at it face value on surface level, it seems weird and messed up. But we have now transcended to a point where the world has become stranger than fiction. We are, if you have an understanding.
And you got this gift from a higher power, be it.
Well, God.
You have to go on and you have to, like you said, did you say you were not baptized?
No, I was baptized.
Okay, you were baptized.
Holy Communion, or
yeah. Well, now you're gonna. Now you should probably go on to that path, but you need to start talking to more people. You need to put this in writing. You need to start a book, a journal, and start expressing it to more people. And this is a platform that you can use. Like I said, this is the beginning of something. So you have to continue to do it. You just can't put it now that you received this gift, this blessing of discernment or whatever you want to call it, this visions. Now you got to continue to tell people about it and then figure out what the message was for you. What is it you want to tell us besides all this? Like, what are you going to do with it?
Well, I don't want to confuse the viewers into sitting here and thinking that I have any kind of personal vendetta in this, because to be honest with you, I don't want any credit for any of this. I think it puts me at a bad position with the government if I,
now if the government, you have to talk to people, like you have to talk to people who have experienced the same thing.
I will say this just as almost like a closing argument is, please, I implore people to do their own research. Stop polluting your mind with incessant cat videos and TikTok.
Exactly.
TikTok has direct dark psychology. I mean, it's made by I'm not even going to go there.
No, they're China. Well, I get a lot of information on there, believe it or not, because this is like a show that we talk about anything and everything beyond the scope of normal, be it UFOs, dogmen, conspiracies. I'm a follower of Alex Jones, Tucker Carlson.
Yes.
I mean, Joe Rogan.
Yes.
And I'm just going to say it right here.
So
we're at a foreground. We're out there. We're in the foreground. We got to make it. We got to wake up people. There is so much. They're polluting the earth. They're polluting our minds. They don't care. All they care are the elite. It's the only ones that care. The people who are billionaires. They're the ones who want to help each other. They don't want to help us.
Well,
And they
like
don't
I
want to help.
said,
It's a spiritual war, Tyler. It's a spiritual war,
it's
a
absolutely
good
right.
and evil.
That's absolutely right. What's going on
And
right now?
that's where we are right now.
We have
So
to. It's our responsibility to ascend to a state of super consciousness. In this line of thinking, it's available to all of us, and that's why, like, I don't consider myself unique. I was just given the ability to do what everyone else can do if they just get out
just
of their own way.
open your eyes and wake up and take your head out of
Yeah,
the sand.
get out of
And
your own way.
and don't be so like, oh, like I've talked to so many people who, I mean, I am an anti-vaxxer. I'll say it right now.
Sure.
I talked to so many people who have gotten the vaccine who regret getting, and there are some who are still asleep saying, "Oh, that was great. I'm going to go get another one."
I want you to
Okay,
look
they're
into.
poisoning you.
I want you to look into optogenetics. What if I told you they've been doing experiments for years on how to guide rats essentially in monkeys through like mazes and obstacles. So essentially, when I say we are in a controlled simulated environment, they were able to use what's considered an RNA transcription factor that attaches to very specific neural circuitry in the brain and almost acts as an antenna, a biological antenna that attaches to basically the back of the hindbrain. And they're able to guide, and that's what is depicted in Egyptian, not mythology, but Egyptology as well. You will actually sit there and see hieroglyphs of satellites on the pharaoh's heads and everything else, and that's basically
That's definitely
the Egyptian Book of the Dead.
And there's going to be so much more. And I wish we could talk another time about, like, what do you think about all these UFO sightings and how the military are coming out in the Congress and having all these hearings, and NASA's not saying whether they're real or not. And what do you think they are? Maybe we can have you come back. Some people think that we are the extraterrestrials, or the government is fooling us all with their reverse engineering, and they're the ones that are doing it, and it's just this big fake false
No, I
flag.
mean, I could definitely speak on that. I'm reading a book called Exo Vaticana, where the idea behind the Vatican is that with Project Lucifer, they're going to release a Vatican savior at some point in time within the next 20 years.
Yeah, and even with the Pope and everything, how people think that the Pope was infiltrated by the devil. That is,
I think he is the incarnation of Satan. If you look at it, he's the living vicar of Christ.
Yeah,
Christ actually represents the anti-hero in the story, which is why it's not as simple as buying into Christian theology, because it's the salvation lies in the Bible, but you have to read it the right way.
Yeah,
right?
you have to read it and you have to understand it. And people don't. It's amazing how a lot people. I've read the Bible maybe twice, and I follow the Halo app I do it every day, and I sit for an hour and I just meditate and I just read the scripture and verses and try to figure out and how it has transformed my life in such a short time that I've been doing that. I'm not the same person I was before I started. Totally different. And I wish more people would do that to open their eyes, because we're in a really bad place in the world. And hopefully everybody's going to wake up. And I hope that we don't have to learn the hard way. But we're coming to that witching hour. So, Tyler, it was so great having you on the show. It was really interesting, and you opened my eyes to a lot of new things. And hopefully you can come back on, because we can talk for
Thank
hours.
you for having me. And I hope I can make it more cohesive.
Well, see, I'm not the easiest. Today's been a little crazy. I had a really crazy morning. My dog had to be heavily medicated for her vet appointment, and it totally went the opposite way. She became more aggressive from all the medication. She only got a rabies shot, made me freak out all day. I'm like overwhelmed with everything, and then nothing was working today either on here for some reason. I don't understand it. It seems like every time I try to talk with somebody about stuff like this, it doesn't work. I mean, nothing works.
It's not by coincidence.
Camera, the screen, my notes were gone, literally erased. And
you know, it's funny, before we had this whole thing, I was trying to set up my desktop and my computer. I had the same issues. It's almost like they don't want.
It's like they didn't want us to talk about it. And yes, we will do this. You should always wear this shirt when you're on the show and get okay. But anyways, I got to go before my the next show. Sean Kelly Into the Night kicks me out. But again, it was so great having you. Yeah, it was great talking with you too. Like I said, we're gonna have to have you back on, and hopefully everything will be working better. But it was great, everybody. But thank you, everybody, so much, New Orleans and across the world and beyond. Thanks for tuning in to Chasing Prophecy on FM 107.7 in New Orleans and 105.3 in Henderson Point, Mississippi. Good night, everyone.